out of the depths, min hametzar, I called to God, who answered me with great deliverance. These words are familiar to us from Hallel, and in that context we are giving voice to joy that we have passed safely through difficulties. But in challenging times such as the ones which we now find ourselves, these words can be a plea. In Hebrew, min hametzar means from a narrow place, from the places of our pain. Rabbi Daniel Upbin teaches that when we are down and out, we aren't simply in that place, we become it. With the image of the fully illuminated menorah still in mind, we are reminded of the famous discussion between the esteemed rabbis Hillel and Shammai, who were great friends but did not agree on any Jewish rituals. Shammai held the opinion that the menorah should be fully lit on the first night of Hanukkah, and just as the oil would slowly be depleted over the course of the holiday, so too Shammai suggested removing a candle from the Chanukiah each night to mimic that. And on the last night, his menorah would feature one single flame. And Hillel, you know, taught the opposite, that we should add light each night, because in matters of holiness, we always increase. We add joy to joy and hope to hope. I don't have to tell you who won that debate. But in so many ways, we hold both darkness and hope simultaneously as we navigate the changing landscape of Jewish life here and abroad, and as our people have done throughout time. Let us turn to the Parsha for its wisdom, with the hope that the lessons we find there may help us negotiate some of the challenges we face today. You should have a text sheet for Miketz, or you're welcome to follow the text posted on the screen. First, let's frame the context of Joseph's story using verses from last week's portion, Vayeshev, when Joseph successfully interprets the chief cupbearer's dream. That earns the cupbearer his freedom, while Joseph continues to languish in prison. So text 1, this is what Joseph said: "Think of me when all is well with you again, and do me the kindness of mentioning me to Pharaoh, so as to free me from this place. For in truth, I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, nor have I done anything that they should have put me in the dungeon." There's no question that his words touch on the most painful parts of Jewish experience today. Kidnapped, imprisoned for no reason. Our hearts ache for all those hostages and families who are experiencing this sorrow every day, and for those of us who continue to work to bring them home. And the part of the story continues a few verses later when we learn, "Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, he forgot him." Like anyone who has had a terrible experience and is anxious to leave it behind, when the cupbearer's life returned to normal, or even to a new normal, he forgot all about Joseph. It's not surprising, but this is another point of friction for us. 2 months post October 7th, how quickly public opinion has turned, how the attention of so many has been diverted. so the remaining hostages and their families may well feel forgotten in their captivity, in a darkness unlike any experienced before. And ultimately, we know that Pharaoh did send for Joseph, who was rushed from the dungeon. The Hebrew word for dungeon is bor. A bor is a cistern used to collect water, which is essential for any ancient agricultural or desert community. We first see this word associated with Joseph's adventure when, as a boy, his father, Jacob, sends him to visit with his older brothers who were pasturing their sheep. And from afar, the brothers can see their tattle-tailing little brother approach and scheme to do him harm. And soon Joseph finds himself cast into a bor, and though it was dry, Rashi paints a vivid picture of a dark, empty, scary, snake and scorpion-infested pit. Even for readers, the surroundings sound frightening, and how much more so then for Joseph. In our day, we can extrapolate what it must be like for all the hostages now who are contending with whatever darkness they are enduring, and for the families who combine Rashi's worrisome imagery with information gleaned from those who have been released. That bor, the pit that they imagine, is a darkness all of its own. The biblical scholar Aviva Zornberg teaches the full terror of the bor is precisely that of disappearing without explanation down a hole to be forgotten by the world. How many are the hostages who cannot be found, who have been bartered away or given over to other terrorist groups? Every waiting family knows what Zornberg articulates so well, that to be remembered would mean release from being buried alive. Keeping their plight before us brings them closer to freedom. And once Joseph's brothers are compelled to come to Egypt due to that famine in Canaan, he learns from them the story of his own absence, of disappearing seemingly without explanation. This is a story they have told for so long it seems like truth. They explain to Joseph, and on your handout it's text number 3. We, your servants, were 12 brothers, sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more. These sound like simple facts. One brother is no more. But privately, in text 4, we listen in on their conversation. They said to one another, "Alas, we are being punished on account of our brother, because we looked upon his anguish yet paid no heed as he pleaded with us. That is why this distress has come upon us." And then Reuben spoke up and said to them, "Did I not tell you, do no wrong to the boy? But you paid no heed. Now comes the reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood, for there was an interpreter between him and them. According to Aviva Zornberg, because the brothers could not accept responsibility for Joseph's anguish at the pit, they had no compassion for him either. And over the many years of their separation, as Joseph moved more deeply into Egyptian society, he became estranged from himself, from his very roots. Only now, with his brothers standing before him, is Joseph's memory jogged, recalling his boyhood dreams. Through Reuben's account of that day, even his brothers are reminded of the pain they caused Joseph and their aged father. Every interaction builds upon itself, making Joseph question who he really is. Beneath the kohl eyeliner and the trappings of his high office, being surrounded by his brothers again, the family who contributed to crafting his identity, that evokes some unspoken emotional response. Their familiar habits, their dress, their shared language moves something deep within Joseph. And yet, he remains deeply ambivalent and demonstrates it by toying with his brother's emotions when he seats them in age order, or when he places Simeon under arrest, or puts the royal goblet in Benjamin's bags, and later gives Benjamin more than any of the other siblings. It's a nod to the unresolved pain he harbors. As Joseph provokes his brothers, piquing their curiosity and their bewilderment, Joseph also questions his own identity. As a father, he named his children Manasseh, meaning God has made me completely forget my hardship and my parental home. And the younger he called Ephraim, meaning God has made me fertile in the land of my affliction. And now, for the first time, with his brothers at hand, Joseph could not help but reconnect with his roots. For us, for so many, since October 7th, how many have felt the pull of Jewish identity anew, where standing proud and speaking out, lifting up the plight of the hostages and denouncing the terrorism of Hamas are an expression of what it means to be Jewish, where conversations in offices and among friends have become a foil for exploring who we feel ourselves to be. More and more, I am hearing people affirm that the massacre on October 7th has made a claim on their own allegiance and clarified the identity that they may not have given much thought to previously. Many are overtly and intentionally more proud of their heritage and at the same time more concerned and fearful as anti-Semitism surges in unexpected crevices and corners. Though many things may separate Jews from one another, this tragedy continues to connect us profoundly. A nechemta, a comforting conclusion, is yet to come for us. And just as we began with verses taken from last week's parashah, so we conclude with those from portions in the coming week, Vayigash and Vayihi. And even more than the words themselves, consider this, that the resolution we seek isn't always attainable or at hand, precisely when we wish it to be. Even in this short text study, in order to see the arc of Joseph's story, from darkness through pain, to identity, to comfort, we have had to reach back to an earlier portion and forward to its future resolution. Joseph's healing comes in the form of an assurance to his brothers, which we see in texts 5 and 6. He says, God has sent me ahead of you to ensure your survival on earth and to save your lives in an extraordinary deliverance. Although you intended me harm, God intended it for good. While we are in the midst of one of the most challenging times in generations, and we cannot know where or how the Nechemta will resolve the pain we feel so deeply, we are yet obligated to hope. Rabbi Hugo Gryn, a British Reform rabbi who in his childhood had been imprisoned in several concentration camps, recounts a lesson his father taught him that guided him through life. He wrote, "It was the cold winter of 1944, and although we had nothing like calendars, my father, who was a fellow prisoner with me, took me and some of my friends to the corner of our barrack, and he announced that it was the eve of Hanukkah and produced a curious-shaped bowl and began to light a wick immersed in his precious but now melted margarine ration. And before he could recite the blessing, I protested at his waste of food. And he looked at me and then at the lamp, and he said, 'You and I have seen that it is possible to live up to 3 weeks without food. And we ourselves once lived almost 3 days without water. But you cannot properly live for even 3 minutes without hope.'" David Miliband, who is the CEO of the International Rescue Committee, calls hope the ultimate renewable resource. When darkness obscures light and we call out from the depths, may we remember how Hillel taught us to add light to light and hope to hope. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. May God give us strength and bless us with peace. Ken Yiratzon, may it be so.